In this video, let's look at Mutual SSL authentication with WSO2 API Manager. Before understanding Mutual SSL authentication with WSO2 API Manager, let's understand Mutual SSL handshake. Mutual SSL is also called two-way SSL. In this scheme, client authenticates the server and the server authenticates the client by means of digital certificates. Both the client and the server will have its own certificates issued by a certificate authority. And the server will have protected resources which client is interested in. So initially the client will request a protected resource from the server. Server will present its certificate, its public certificate, to the client to verify whether this certificate is issued by a trusted certificate authority. As the third step, the client verifies that with the certificate authority. And if that step goes through, the client presents its own certificate to the server for server to verify if the client certificate was issued by a trusted certificate authority. And if that step goes through, client can access the protected resource from the server. And client and the server both will usually have its own key stores where it will store the certificates of other entities, such as the client will store the server certificate and the server will store the client certificate and so forth. So this is the basic means of mutual SSL. Now let's look at how this is applicable in WSO2 API Manager. You can download WSO2 API Manager from WSO2 website. Head on to WSO2.com and then to products and then click API Manager and then click try it now. It will give you an option to download the latest version for your operating system. Since I'm using macOS, it gives me an option to download a package for macOS. In addition to that, it will also give various other installation options such as for Docker, Kubernetes and so forth. So one easier way to verify certain things in your local setup is to download the zip archive, which is a binary archive of distribution. So once you download that, it will be a zip file. So I have that zip file already downloaded and placed it inside a folder in my desktop named Mutual SSL. As you can see, the zip file is already there. I have also extracted it. So once you navigate into that, you will see a number of folders. Head on to bin directory and you will see a number of script files. So the script file that I am interested in running is the WSO2server.sh because I'm running a Unix flavor, which is Mac. And if you are on Windows, make sure you run the WSO2server.bat. And only other prerequisite to just run it on your local environment is to have Java installed and your Java home environment variable set. So I have already got the Java home environment variable set to my Java installation, which is JDK 1.8. And the other thing to note is I'm going to run the server.sh, and this essentially means there'll be a single node of API Manager running in your local setup. But in a mission critical deployment, we don't recommend running a single instance of API Manager just like this. You should have a high availability setup, at least with 2 nodes of all-in-one API Manager in a high availability setup. Otherwise, you need to resort for a fully distributed deployment where you segregate separate components of the API Manager. So once the server starts, it should show you number of URLs to access the publisher, the developer portal, and so forth. Until this is done, let's head on to configure certificates that is needed for our demonstration. For the purpose of demonstration, let's create self-signed certificate and also emulate a root certificate authority. I have created a folder named certs to organize all the certificates, and let's navigate into that, and this is where I'm going to run the certificate commands to generate certificates and so forth. So I have a GitHub guest which is ideal for our scenario it outlines the commands that OpenSSL commands that you need to run to generate the keys and certificates, and also to emulate root certificate authority. So I will add the URL for this gist in the description below. And now let's run these commands one after the other. And it says remove this option if you don't want a password, and I'm going to do that. So let me remove the -des3 option. So this is going to generate a key file named rootCA, and you should have it now. And the next command is to create and self-sign the root certificate. So this is what the command is, and you should obviously have the OpenSSL installed, and most of the Unix flavors have OpenSSL installed, so I already have it as well. So otherwise you need to install it. So OpenSSL, and you give the key that is just generated, so you make sure that you are running it in the same folder, and its validity is 124 days. There shouldn't be a problem for the demonstration purposes. And it's gonna ask a few questions. So the country name, let me say US, state or province, let me say California, locality San Francisco, organization name, I'm going to say it as ABC, organization unit, let's say finance, and the common name abc.com, and the email address admin@abc.com. So you can provide any of the details that you like, and this should generate the root certificate, self-signed root certificate authority certificate that you just generated. Now for each of the operations you need to have certificates. So I need a certificate for our client, and we are going to demonstrate the mutual SSL, right? So the client should have its own certificate, so I'm going to generate that. Server is WSO2 API Manager. It already has a certificate, and we'll take that thing as well. We can extract that, and I'll show that in a while. And to generate a certificate, first I need a key for the client side. So let me use this command to do that. And it says mydomain.com.key, so I'll leave it as it is. And you should have the key file now. And then you should generate a certificate signing request. There are multiple methods to do that, and there is an interactive method which will ask a couple of questions, just like it asked when you generated the certificate for the root certificate authority. Otherwise there is a one-liner as well. So I'm going to choose the method A, so that will show us what exactly we are doing here. And you are providing the private key that you just generated, and the certificate signing request will be generated based on this. Again, I'm going to use US, state is, let me say New York, locality New York City, organization name, let me say XYZ, and organization unit is engineering, common name xyz.com, email address admin@xyz.com, and a challenge password. You can enter anything that you like, so just let me try to enter something that I remember. This is just my name, and okay. So now we should have the certificate signing request, and once the certificate signing request file is there, what we usually do is we send this file to a certificate authority, and the certificate authority will use its own certificate to sign this request and generate a certificate based on that. So we can so if you need to pass additional configs, okay, we can do that. So you can also verify, so this is just another option, so you can just do that for the purpose of the demonstration, just to see. It will just show some cryptographic details which should just show the details about your file that you just generated, the certificate sign-in request, whether it is all fine. So you can use this to verify that. Other than that, don't worry about the the cryptographic details mentioned there. So now generate the certificate using my domain CSR and the key along with the CA root key. So this is what normally a root authority would do with a CSR to generate mydomain.com.crt, which is the certificate for your client in this case. So let's try to generate that now. So because I'm emulating a root certificate authority locally, and also the client is also running on the same machine, so just think it's different machines, so but we are running it in the same machine here. And in this case, yeah, it's all the files have the same names as we have generated before, so this should just generate the crt file for mydomain.com, and here it is. And there's one last command that you can run to just verify the details of your certificate, which you can use here, so you can just try that, and it will also show the details that you just provided when you created the key for the clients. So this is all we have for the certificate creation process, and next let's see how we can upload this client certificate into WSO2 API Manager, and also to download WSO2 server certificate to be used when we invoke an API. That's gonna come next. Now I have my API manager already started, which I can say by looking into these URLs, the publisher URL and the developer portal URL, as well as the console URL. So the publisher URL will be this. However, the to download first the certificate, I need to uh, navigate to port number 8243, which is the port that the gateway listens. So I will navigate to that, and then you can download it from the browser itself. I'm using Firefox, and whichever the browser you're using, follow the steps accordingly. It should be somewhat similar in all the browsers, the way that you download certificate. So I'm going to use it here, and view certificate, and you can download the PIM file, and I should have it downloaded in my downloads directory. And now if I go into my root directory or the search directory, I will try to bring it will be called localhost dot pim. I have had this downloaded previously, and in fact the PIM file and the CRT format are both the same, so I'm going to just bring the CRT format here and copy it down for later usage. Okay, then let's see, this is the publisher URL. Now let's go into the publisher URL and create an API, and try to see how to enable Mutual SSL there. And let me just go use publisher. It should bring a login page. I'm going to log in with the default username and password, which is the admin username and admin password, and this should bring into the publisher landing page. And because it's fresh install, I don't have any APIs listed here. Let's create an API, by the way. There are a number of options. I'm going to use the design new API, and then say mutual SSL test, and maybe I can say mock user version 001. And for the endpoint purpose, you can give a real endpoint or a dummy endpoint. I'm going to give a real endpoint, and for this I want to have a backend ready. To do that thing, I have a tool named Mockon, which is a cool application for you to test backend services and so forth, like to have a quick endpoint ready. And it has I think for Mac OS you can download it from the Mockon website, the package file. Also you can also install it from Brew, and for other operating systems I believe there should be ways to install as well. So let me run this particular sample API, the slash users on port 3000. Let me just run. It should be running now. Just to check if it's running properly, what I can do here is I can say curl. I'm using the curl command and the HTTP and the local host port to 3000 and then user. And I think it's not the thing, so users maybe. Yes, it's users. As you can see, I got a response back. So I'm going to use this particular endpoint. I'm going to take it up to here and then use that endpoint here as my backend URL. And then I can select a couple of business plans. I can select the entire thing and then click create. And if you see this, like once you create that, you will see a number of options here, and the runtime configurations is where the mutual SSL configuration needs to be set up. So if you just go into transport level security, you see both HTTP and HTTPS options are enabled. That means the gateway will accept HTTP requests as well as HTTPS requests. For mutual SSL purpose, I can click the mutual SSL and then make the certificate either optional or mandatory. In our case, we want to make it mandatory, and then let's click add certificate, and we can click a business plan for this authentication process, and then add an alias, my domain client, something like that, and then I can upload it. I have it in my desktop, mutual SSL, and then certs, and then I have to upload my CRT for the client, which is going to call using this, or else we can also add the root CRT. That will also work, but let me just add this for the purpose of demonstration. So let me add that, and now we have the certificate ready, and there are other options as well. Now I need to have a resource ready for the demonstration. It just accepts any resource. Let me delete those. And because if you see this as the context of slash user, so I'm going to add a get resource to slash users and then add that, and I will have slash users endpoint ready and save it. And that's the only resource I'm going to have for the demonstration purpose. And then go to the life cycle and then publish your the API we just created. So this should just publish the API, and we can navigate to the developer portal, which is the storefront. From within the publisher itself, just click on this, and it should just show the API, the mutual SSO. As you can see, it just automatically logged me in because SSO is by default enabled. And also remember, with these runtime configuration, OAuth2 is also enabled by default, so we will have to send an OAuth2 token when calling the API as well. So let's try to call the API now with different options. So next, let's try to call this API and see how it responds. So let's go to try out tab, and you can see the base URL for this API slash mock user slash 100, the version number, and then I have one resource which I added slash users. So let me have this copied. I have this URL already saved here in a text editor, so let me copy that up to this point. I'm not going to send my key or the certificate or the authorization via OAuth2 token to see how it responds. Yeah, so let me use that. Let me clear this and try to send this, and we should get a 401 unauthorized because it expects an OAuth2 token. So let's try to generate the token for this particular API. For that, we need to create an application. Let's create a sample mutual client, and I just can leave that as the quota as 10 per minute, a sample client. I can save it, and then I need to subscribe my API to this particular application. And before we do that, we can also go into the O2 token and generate the token, but let me just go to my API and get this subscription done. So just navigate to the applications and then click your application and the tier that you want. So let me just keep it as default. So now this particular API is subscribed to that application, and we can generate tokens also from here. So it will just take you to the token application. Now for the application you will have okay, so we still don't have the key or secret. That means we need to generate that here. So let's go to the application page and then O2 tokens, and then I can generate the keys, and this should generate an access token on the fly. So I can just copy this and use this to send authentication. As you can see, it also generates a consumer key and a secret for the application as well, which you can use to programmatically generate your O2 tokens, and also to refresh your token when it expires. So let me use this uh, token as my authorization bearer. I'm going to copy that, and ideally this should go through, but yeah, so it just went through. Let me see that. Yes, in normal circumstances this should go through, but with Mutual SSL enabled this should not go through, but it still went. So let's see what went wrong. Yeah, let me go to the publisher and let's go to the runtime configuration, transport level security. Oh, looks like the Mutual SSL hasn't got enabled. I uploaded the certificate, but seems like it hasn't got saved previously. So let me just put that as mandatory and save it back. And okay, so now the Mutual SSL enabled in addition to the O2. Yeah, so let's go to um, so our command here. So let me try to run this. Okay, expectedly so, even with the O2 token now it gives an authentication failure. So now we need to send the certificate. So for that let me try to get these two values here. We need to send in addition to that these two values. So mydomain.certificate and the key file. So this should now, because now we are sending the certificate of the client side certificate as well, because it has to offer for the server to verify that, because the server already communicates this back to the client with that certificate of the server, and the client goes on and verifies that with the certificate authority, which is the local certificate authority that we created. And then the client has to offer its certificate to make sure the the server could verify that against the certificate authority, or in this instance we uploaded the client certificate into the WSO2 API Manager, which will have the root certificate authority as well, certificate of root CA, and it should verify based on that. So let's run it now, and this should just go through, and as expectedly so, it just goes through. So this is the demonstration of the WSO2 API Manager's Mutual SSL. So now there's one caveat with this approach. So now let's say we have multiple APIs here. Let's think about 100 APIs, and all of these 100 APIs are should be enabled with Mutual SSL. And usually let's say these APIs are used by 100 different client applications, and which all of those are signed with a particular certificate authority. So in general, what we will have to do is all those 100 certificates will have to be uploaded for each of those APIs in this configuration level. So it's going to be a cumbersome approach, cumbersome mechanism to do that for 100 APIs 100 times. So to mitigate that kind of a scenario, we can do or enable mutual SSL in a global level. So that's what I'm going to show next. So before we do that thing, so let's disable a mutual SSL once again here. Maybe I can remove the certificate altogether from this, and then from mutual SSL, and then save it back. So this should remove the mutual SSL authentication requirement for this particular API. And to look at the WSO2 API Manager, I'll just go to WSO2 API Manager has a particular folder called a repository, and under that we have a directory called resources. Under that we have directory called the security. So that's where the WSO2 stores the keystore file. And as you can see, there is a keystore file named the client-truststore.jks, and this is where normally all the other entities public certificates will be stored. So actually this client certificate that we added would have been actually programmatically added to this client-truststore.jks. So we can just verify if that still exists, and if still exists we can delete it using the Java Keytool. So to verify that, let me take Java list command. So this is the list command. So to do that, and then use client-truststore, and yeah, so it's there is a default password for the WSO2 Java keystores. I recommend you go to WSO2 documentation and figure out that. And yeah, so this just brings back a number of certificates. Yeah, I think it would be a little harder to look at that, so let's save it into a file called out. Yeah, so let me just find that, and I think I gave my domain as the alias, so it still exists. So let's try to delete this to make sure that we start with a clean slate once and for all, right? So let's do that now, and to do that we need to use the Keytool delete command. I think let me just figure out the alias once again. It's my domain client. Yeah, but it has actually added another additional thing. So let's just save this value to make sure that we delete that particular alias, right? So let me save that to here. Okay, so let me use that. Yeah, I think let's type in it, Keytool delete alias, and then we have to use this alias. And then keystore is our client truststore. Okay, so this should ask for the password, which is WSO2 carbon by default. And now if we just go and get this again into out, and now I'm gonna use that and see if it exists. It's no more. So now we can start afresh. So what I'm going to do here is to bring the root certificate from the desktop, and I have certs, and then in this case rootCA.crt, because my use case is now there will be multiple clients certificates was which are signed with the root certificate authority, and you don't want to upload all those root certificates or client certificates individually into all the APIs that you have in the API publisher. So I'm going to do that once to make sure that it works across without the need of doing this to individual APIs. So let's bring this root certificate here, and then I want to put this into um, the client trust store. So I have to upload that. So that's going to be the next operation. Okay, to upload the cert to a JKS file, we can use this command over here. So Keytool import command. So I'm going to use that Keytool import, and my key store is the client trust store, and the file is root cert, and alias I'm going to use mydomain.com or mydomain. Just let's keep it as it is. So, and it's going to ask for the WSO2 carbon, and yes, I trust this certificate. And yeah, so now once again let's try to put output the certificates that's located inside the client trust to make sure that we have the certificate now. And my domain, yes, it's now available. So now what I'm going to do here is next up, now we have this authentication details ready, but we also do have, we did not specify the mutual SSL authentication here, but we need to specify to the API manager somehow that mutual SSL should be enabled globally. So that's what I'm going to do next. So this we cannot do just like that, so we have to use the configuration file of WSO2 to enable it globally. So to do that thing, we can navigate into the repository directory, and then we have configuration. Under that you will see a file named deployment.toml. Yeah, deployment.toml, and we need to enable the configuration as this. So we need to have this thing enabled, and I just copy this value here. I will also add this into the description for you to have a look at it. So transport pass through HTTP listener parameters SSLVerifyClient is required. So that means for all the clients, SSL verification or mutual SSL verification is enabled by default. So that's what it means. So let me just save this file. Okay, so now it is saved, but for this to take effect, we will have to restart the server. So I'm going to do a restart now, and let's shut it down and bring it back again, and it should be up in less than a minute, depending on your server specification where you're running. It can even come up within 20 seconds. So once this is done, let's try to call our API. Okay, the service started once again. So now let's call our API to see how it reflects. So first time, let me try to call it without the certificates being sent. And so as you can see, I'm just eliminating this part now. And I haven't enabled the runtime configuration within the publisher. I haven't enabled this, but guess what, this will enforce the mutual SSL because now we have enabled it globally. So I'm gonna call it expectedly, so it just said SSL handshake failure. And to see if it works with the certificate sent over, let's use this command. And yes, as expected, it just calls the API as expected. So this is a demonstration, a very small demonstration of how the mutual SSL functionality works in WSO2 API Manager. Um, yeah, that's all I got for today, and hopefully we'll meet in another video soon. Thank you for watching.